Hello and welcome to Goodstock and the Being Good is a State of Mind conference. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you to our two wonderful panelists, Professor Peter Singe, who's coming to us from Australia, and Professor Marcus Kisil, who's coming from Rio. I'll ask them to introduce themselves and say a few words, and then we will discuss a few key questions on altruism, the importance of doing good, and how to be effective in doing so. I'm Darryl Cooke, the co-founder of Gunnercooke, one of the fastest growing law firms and professional services firms in the world, still with 25% growth year on year after 10 years. I'm the author of a number of books on private equity and also on innovation. I have always believed that business should have a purpose beyond profit, and we encourage our 500 people or so through our foundation to get involved on a daily basis. And we also aim to take that message as much as we can to business leaders, businesses of all sizes. And I ask of business leaders, do you want to be remembered for making money or for the legacy that you've left behind? Do you want your employees to know you for your business efficiencies or for how you change the world? You want your children to remember you because you became the leader of a business or because you used the influence that you had to change the world? Do your employees want to be proud of making better or cheaper widgets, or do they want to know that you are improving the world? We live in an unequal society, and we aren't going to change it soon. Much as we should, much as we know it is the right thing to do, there is far much self-interest at stake. The pandemic has only exposed further the harsh truth of societal inequalities. When our businesses consider how to survive, there's a bigger issue too. As embarrassed as we are to acknowledge it, we're not going to give up our privileges. We send our children to better schools because we can pay for the privilege. We go to private health hospitals for non-emergency operations because we can pay for the privilege. We live in leafy, attractive areas with large houses because we can pay for the privilege. There are few of us going to give up those privileges. So we will continue to live in an unequal society because we perpetuate it. Rightly or wrongly, we perpetuate it. When we talk about creating an equal society, we mean so long as I don't have to give up my privileges. So perhaps the task is just too difficult. Or perhaps the real task that we should focus on is creating opportunities, real opportunities, opportunities that may help to level the playing field. No longer pretending that we do so by our nice talk about equality, but really doing it, making it really happen. And it is, I believe, within the gift of every leader, that ability to make it happen. It's of no value to preside over an organization where a few people raise money for good causes by running marathons or digging gardens or painting walls that in many cases will have been painted 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years. Who are we fooling? Why do we convince ourselves that we are doing good? It may briefly improve the morale for our society, for our staff, but it does little real good. But leadership is everything. It comes from the top. So creating opportunity shouldn't be delegated to a CSR or a corporate social responsibility team in the bowels of the building. If we really mean to make a difference, their office should be next to the office of the CEO or the chairman. And even more than that, the CEO or the chairman should dedicate a large proportion of their week to creating and focusing on social opportunities. It should be integral to the business, and everyone should know it is integral. Everyone should want their leaders to ensure that it is that important. If you want to create a legacy, it's every bit as important as your business and this year's profit. But strangely, if you get the behaviors in the business right, the desire to work for you and the business, then you'll be amazed just how good your numbers can become. Being a business leader is about conducting the orchestra. It's often said that a really good CEO can do the job on 2 to 3 days a week by carefully conducting how the business is run. The real job, therefore, is recognizing how important it is and directing the business. It's about leading from the front. Focusing on real social change will have an amazingly positive effect on your business. Vision is about where you're heading, and values are the glue that bind the company to make the right decisions. Culture, buzz, wanting to go to work every day is all about creating excitement, about why you are there, and the positive good that you're doing by being there. Who would want to leave a business that makes them feel that good? It was the historian Michael Schumann, when writing about Confucius, wrote that Confucius expected people to do the right thing because it was the right thing to do, not because they would get paid off at some point in the future. It is the right thing to do, but it will also improve your business, your legacy, and your own life. Within a square mile of every business, there is every challenge possible. It is a microcosm of every inequality that we face throughout the world: disability, lack of opportunity, old age, mental health, loneliness, poverty. Am I, as a leader, going to sit there and ignore it and tell myself it is the problem of government with its bureaucracy, its conflict, sometimes its ineptitude, its short-term approach, and its waste of public funds? Or am I going to do something about it? A business leader does not rely on a public vote and can simply do the right thing without fear of creating a storm. A business leader has a much better chance of making changes for the better than most governments. So she must grasp it with both hands. You should say, this is my community, where my staff, my employees live and work, and their families. Do they expect more from me? Do I want to leave a legacy of change in our community? Or am I happy to earn more money for my efforts and take my pension and head to the golf course? Which do I feel the most comfortable with? It may be uncomfortable to think about, but it should be more comfortable not to act. And yes, at the same time, we are global citizens. And when we work in global markets, we have a responsibility, in addition to our local communities, to help the even greater inequalities of developing countries. It's no longer sufficient not to act. There's no longer an excuse not to act. It isn't about judgment. It's about what your people want, what your family will be proud of. And it's also about you, about what gets you up in the morning, what you can do to help those less fortunate, less equal, about the pleasure that you'll feel when you've made the world that little bit more equal because of the opportunities that you've created. We all have a responsibility. If you're a leader, you have an ability to influence. If you're not a leader, you have an opportunity to influence a leader. Talk to one, influence him or her, but do get involved. We can all make a difference. We can all change the debate.
Hi, I'm Peter Singe. I'm a professor of bioethics at Princeton University, and one of the things that I've been particularly interested in over my whole career are questions about ethics and how we ought to live, and in particular, how ought people who are comfortably off in affluent societies respond to the situation of those in extreme poverty elsewhere in the world. The view that I've taken starts from a simple little story that I put in an article many years ago. I asked my readers to imagine that they're walking across a park that has in it a shallow pond. And in this pond, they notice there's something splashing. And when they look more closely, they see that it's a small child. Although the pond is a shallow one, this child is too small to stand. Of course, the first thing you would do is say, how does this child come to be in this pond? Where are the parents or a babysitter? It must be somebody looking after so small a child. But you look around, you can't see anyone else. There's only you. So your second thought is, I'd better jump into that pond and save the child. Otherwise, the child will probably drown. But then before you can actually do that, you have a third thought, which is, you've put on some of your best clothes today. You're going somewhere important. Very expensive pair of shoes, for example. And if you rush into the pond, you're going to ruin them. But you don't have time to get rid of them. The child might drown in the meantime. So then perhaps you think, well, this child isn't really my responsibility. It's not my child. Nobody asked me to look after the child. It has nothing to do with me. So why don't I just go on my way, forget that I've ever seen the child? Now, I put that little story to my readers, and I'm putting it to you now, in the hope that they would all say, no, you can't do that. That would be a monstrous thing to do, to put the cost of replacing your clothes above a child's life. How could anyone do that? I hope you did have that reaction. But if you did, then I want to draw your attention to the situation that we are all in. When I say we, again, I'm talking about people who are comfortably off in affluent societies with regard to people in extreme poverty. We know that there are effective organizations helping those people, and those organizations may save lives, for example, by distributing bed nets against malaria in areas where malaria is a major killer of young children. Or they may do things like restoring sight in people who are blind by performing cataract surgery, which is a very simple, inexpensive operation that everybody in an affluent country is going to get. But people in low-income countries are not able to get from a National Health Service, and they're not able to afford to pay for. Or they may be, the organization may be helping people to get out of poverty by mentoring them in starting small businesses, providing some small amount of capital to do so. Or they may just be helping people to live a better life by providing them with some income support. All of these things we could contribute to, and it wouldn't really cost us much more than a pair of expensive shoes to do so in ways that could achieve the goals that I've just mentioned, to restore sight, to help someone start a business, or even to save a life. So if you think it would be a really monstrous thing to do to allow the child to drown in the pond, what should you now think of yourself if you haven't been helping any of these organizations? I think that that is something that we ought to be doing. And I think we ought to be making that an important part of our life. I think also we ought to be doing it as effectively as possible. There's a movement that started about a dozen years ago called effective altruism. And it combines these two things. The idea that making the world a better place should be an important goal for all of us, not the only thing that we think about, but one of our objectives. And secondly, that when we do this, we should do it as effectively as possible. We should try to get the best value for our money, as of course we do when we go shopping as a consumer. We don't like to feel that we've bought a new car, but we could have got just as good a car for half the price, or that we've got a phone when we could have got a phone that would do just as well for much less money. But we don't seem to think this way about our philanthropy. We don't seem to think, where can I get the best value for the money that I donate? And the answer to that, and here I do have to differ with what Darryl Cooke said about the square mile where your business or corporation is, the answer to that overwhelmingly is not in an affluent country. Here's a simple explanation why. In the United States, for a family of four, the poverty line is around $23,000. Imagine that you give a family on $23,000 another $1,000. Is that going to make a life-changing difference to them? It's very unlikely. According to the World Bank, the extreme poverty line is around $2 per day. So let's say $750 a year, roughly. Imagine you give $1,000 to someone whose annual income is $750. Will that make a life-changing difference? Quite possibly. They could now start a small business. They could perhaps help a relative who has cataracts to see again. They could replace their leaky thatched roof with a corrugated iron roof that would keep themselves and their food supplies dry. So I'm going to urge you to think about doing good where you get the best value for your money. Beyond that, though, I would certainly echo what Darryl Cooke just said, that I think when companies commit themselves to doing good, as well as their major business activity, to trying to help people in extreme poverty, make the world a better place, it does create a sense of purpose, an atmosphere which I think otherwise employees may not have. I think it's been shown that it helps corporations to maintain the spirits and morale of their staff and helps them to retain their staff in the face of competition. People want to have a purpose. They want to feel that they've done something valuable. They want to feel fulfilled in what they're doing and that it is in harmony with their values. Living an ethical life and running a company that contributes to making the world a better place is an important part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And I do need to tell you that you have had a major effect on my family, because my two sons both became vegetarians as a result of reading your books a few years ago.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a different issue from the one I've just talked about, but it is another of my concerns, certainly.
Marcus, can I come to you? Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Peter. I am a full professor at the University of São Paulo at School of Public Health, and I teach health administration. This is one part of my life. The second is my work in the philanthropy issues that involve my long experience starting as director for Latin America and the Caribbean of Kellogg Foundation for 15 years. And based on this understanding that I have at Kellogg Foundation, I had some words that our founder, Mr. Kellogg, put forward that guide me in this issue, is help people to help themselves. This understanding is an understanding in which we work with the idea of altruism in a way that is an unselfish desire to help. It's a concern for other people. And it is represented that you do this only because you have someone that is a need, and this need cannot be solved by himself or herself. So someone has a need and someone should come spontaneously to help. So this is the idea that orient Kellogg Foundation for all the story of the organization, in which you ask people, what is your need? And based on this need, we start to work. After I left Kellogg, I created an organization in Brazil that works with donors. And the 15 years as a CEO of this organization, we had more than 400 clients that came to us, and they rich families, business, individuals. And as a result of this, 80% of our clients were business. And we apply the same understanding, ask them to ask the people what they need. As a result of this, we created an important participation of a business in the Brazilian philanthropy. Today, just take the numbers that came out in 2020. It was influenced by the pandemics that we are having. 85% of giving in Brazil was from business. So this represented an important contribution, a unique contribution coming from, not from the government, but from the civil society. And this understanding is an understanding that I believe explain in the case of Brazil, Argentina, and in many other countries, that sometimes government is afraid of the power that could come from individuals, corporations that are givers. In some way, one of the points that avoid a big growth of philanthropy and doing good is exactly the way that you have the behavior of government. In one side, they look like that they are afraid of the power that could gain the experience, the learning, the changes that could come with the money from individuals or companies and so on. So as a result, we have a very weak legal framework that it could push for the topic. The second question that we have is the style of government in our countries, in which you have a more paternalistic view. As a consequence, you try to avoid other voice that is not the voice of the boss. And the boss here is the government. And when you talk, it's not only Brazil, it's a culture in Latin America. And the third factor that we need to put in forward is all the question about the motivation that is behind giving, behind philanthropy in our way. You know that our region is a region that had the influence of the Catholic Church, where the idea of charity is much bigger than the idea of private social investment, or the way that you do strategic philanthropy or changing philanthropy or any other way to say that we are oriented to change. So charity is really to work with the basic needs. And this is the culture of giving in our part of the world. As a consequence, when you face the possibility to make it bigger, the idea in doing good through philanthropy to giving, we have to face a legal framework that was not friendly. We need to work with the government that see the paternalistic view more important to gain votes. And third, you have the idea that it's very difficult to work with a culture in which you just wanted to see basic needs of human being and not the other big needs that they are faced. That's all at this point, Darryl.
Thank you, Marcus. That was, thank you both of you. That's a really terrific introduction. I've got so many questions, but I suspect we're not going to have the time for very many. So let me go to what possibly I think is possibly the most important question, because I personally believe that we have to win the hearts and the minds of leaders to help to get them involved. And quite often they have stakeholders that prevent them from doing it, or they just don't have the right mindset to do it. But what are the benefits to a company being involved in philanthropy? Peter.
Well, I think the benefits really are an improved sense of purpose for all of those involved in the company. Of course, I mean, there are companies where I suppose their products are their own purpose. If you're working for a company that's making vaccines against the coronavirus right now, you won't lack for a sense of purpose. But as I think you said, Darryl, in your opening remarks, you may be making widgets which basically are just trying to compete with someone else's widgets, and there's not really a lot of difference. You're just trying to get some brand differentiation out there. Or you may, in fact, just be making money for your investors, as you might be if you're a stock trading company. So I think it's really important to have the sense that this company is more than just that. It's more than, particularly, is more than making money for the stockholders and the employees and so on, but that it is actually serving a larger purpose, and that it's using wealth generated in order to do good things in the world as a whole. And that can be done in many ways. One of them is by encouraging and giving employees time to do pro bono work. Another is by encouraging philanthropy from the employees, for example, encouraging them to donate a small percentage of their income, and companies can encourage them by matching it. They can, if they wish, suggest particular effective charities. I talked in what I said about some of the most effective charities. I founded a charity called thelifeyoucansave.org, which doesn't do any of the good things I mentioned directly, but gathers information about which charities have been independently assessed and found to be the most valuable. So you can go there and you can find the most effective charities if that's what you're looking for.
Thank you. Marcus, do you want to add something to that?
Yes, I believe that companies can make a real difference in our context. And I think they can do through some basic strategies in the operation. One of them is how you can involve staff, your works, in the decision-making process where you are putting the money. And this represents a way that you create the responsibility and the involvement and the sharing of the ideals that could be in the individuals become part of the ideals of the company. The second point, I think it's important that you work in your own community if you have a business that is limited to a group of communities or a region or something else, because this involves the idea that you are a benefactor of a benefactor that you receive from the company. So it's a double way relationship. And this represents an important contribution because normally when you have a community where the majority of the works for that company, you need to see that the guy spends 8 hours a day in the company and 16 hours a day in the community. So he has the natural link between community needs and the possibility of the corporation to be part of the support. And I think also it's important that for the company that if you put attention to your brand, the name that you wanted to have, the reputation that you want to bring with the actions that you do, it's important that you make clear this with your employees, employers, and so on. So everyone should be involved in the question. No? I believe that one of the issues that is education become an important contribution that companies should do. Education in the sense that you need to make it clear for everyone why you are involved in this. And when you have results, impact, you need to really make it clear that you are an important contributor in the changing process. So the changing process is a continuum question in our case, and it is represent an important way to highlight the participation of the individuals, and people become proud to be part of this discussion. Now, one question that the companies has a problem in our situation is when the pandemics became clear that they don't want to take a risk. For instance, we don't have an important expression of giving to science or the production of vaccine or drugs and so on. So this represented that it's still something that you need to promote, that the science is as much as important as other things in the quality of life of the individuals and doing good. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. And actually, I think that, just hearing from you both, one thing that I would add to that as a business leader is that the people are our best assets. And I love the phrase, I think, that Carol Dweck talked about, having a growth mindset, because having people who want to change the world and improve the world certainly have that sort of growth mindset. And it's people like that I want in my business, because if they're going to do that with their views on the world, then they're definitely going to do it in my business as well. So I think it's a massive benefit to when we recruit and involving those people in the business. I'm afraid that we've completely run out of time. There have been lots of questions that I'd love us to discuss, and perhaps hopefully we might be able to do it at another time. But we just want to say thank you, Peter, and thank you, Marcus, for terrific insights. Very generous with your time, but also some terrific insights for all of us. Thank you all for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that you've learned something, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye, and be safe.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Darryl. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you very much.
Bye.